Think like a king. Even when you live like a beginner, there will be moments in your life when the world will look at you and see nothing. No crown, no throne, no evidence of greatness. Just an ordinary person standing in an ordinary place, surrounded by ordinary circumstances. They will see your empty pockets and assume your future is empty too. They will see your slow progress and assume you are lost. They will see your beginning and mistake it for your limit. But what they cannot see, what they will never see, is the kingdom forming inside your mind. Because every empire that has ever existed was built twice. First in the invisible world of belief, then in the visible world of reality. Before there was a crown on a king's head, there was a vision in his mind. Before there was power in his hands, there was certainty in his heart. And before the world ever believed in him, he believed in himself. This is where your transformation begins. Not when the money arrives, not when the recognition comes, not when the applause fills the room, but now, in the silence, in the uncertainty, in the days when nothing around you reflects the greatness inside you. Because thinking like a king is not about what you have. It is about how you see yourself when you have nothing. Most people are born into mental prisons they never escape. They inherit doubt like a family heirloom. They inherit fear like a tradition. They inherit limitation like a law of nature. They walk carefully, speak cautiously, and dream small because they were taught that greatness belongs to someone else, someone luckier, someone richer, someone chosen. But they are wrong. Dead wrong. Greatness is never given. It is claimed. And the moment you decide to see yourself differently, you begin to become different. The moment you stop asking for permission to exist and start acting with quiet authority, something shifts. Not outside, inside. Because the world responds to how you see yourself. If you see yourself as weak, the world will treat you as weak. If you see yourself as temporary, the world will treat you as replaceable. But if you see yourself as inevitable, the world begins to move differently around you. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. There is a reason why Napoleon Hill spent decades studying the most powerful individuals in history and discovered a truth so simple yet so dangerous that most people ignore it their entire lives. He discovered that before they ever possessed wealth, power, or influence, they possessed certainty. They thought differently. They carried themselves differently. They expected differently. They expected differently. They lived in the present, but their identity lived in the future. They were beginners in circumstance, but kings in mindset. And mindset is where every kingdom begins. Look at Abraham Lincoln. He did not look like a king. He lost elections. He failed in business. He faced rejection after rejection after rejection. From the outside, his life looked like a sequence of defeats. But inside, there was something unbreakable. A decision. He refused to see himself as his failures. He refused to define himself by temporary outcomes. He carried himself as a man with purpose, even when the world gave him no proof. And eventually, reality had no choice but to catch up with his identity. This is the secret most people never understand. You do not become what you want. You become what you believe you are. If you believe you are small, you will unconsciously shrink your actions. If you believe you are ordinary, you will unconsciously sabotage extraordinary opportunities. If you believe you are waiting, you will spend your life waiting. But when you believe you are building something inevitable, you begin to move with a different energy. You stop hesitating. You stop apologizing. You stop negotiating with your fear, because kings do not ask for permission to build their kingdoms. They build even in uncertainty, even in isolation, even when no one understands their vision, especially then. There is something dangerous about a person who has nothing, but believes they are destined for something greater, because they are not distracted by comfort. They are not weakened by complacency. They are not imprisoned by expectations. They are free to imagine, free to act, free to become. This is why your beginning is not your weakness. It is your greatest advantage. Because when you live like a beginner, but think like a king, you unlock a power most people never touch. You stop measuring yourself by your current results. You start measuring yourself by your internal standard, and that internal standard becomes your compass. Your anchor. You wake up differently, you walk differently, you walk differently, you decide differently. Not because your world has changed, but because you have. And once your identity changes, your behavior follows, your habits follow, your actions follow, and eventually your reality follows. Because identity is the architect of destiny. Every action you take is a vote for the person you believe you are. Every decision either reinforces weakness or reinforces power. And most people never realize they are casting votes every single day. They vote for fear when they delay what they know they must do. They vote for mediocrity when they settle for comfort instead of growth. They vote for limitation when they say maybe later instead of now. And over time, these small invisible votes form a visible life. Not the life they dreamed of, but the life they unconsciously built. Kings understand something different. They understand that reality is not formed in one dramatic moment. It is formed in thousands of quiet decisions no one else sees. The decision to continue when stopping would be easier. The decision to believe when doubt would be more logical. The decision to act when fear would be more comfortable. This is how power is built, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. There was a young man once who sold newspapers on trains. He had no prestigious education, no powerful connections, no guarantee of success, just curiosity and an obsession with possibility. He conducted experiments in a small train compartment, surrounded by chemicals, failures, and uncertainty. Most people saw a boy playing with ideas, but inside his mind, he saw a future the world could not yet imagine. That boy was Thomas Edison. He failed over 1,000 times trying to create a working light bulb. 1,000 times the world could have called him a failure. 1,000 times he could have surrendered his identity to doubt, but he didn't, because he never saw himself as someone who was failing. He saw himself as someone who was discovering. And there is a difference between failing and discovering. Failure weakens the person who doubts themselves. Discovery strengthens the person who believes in themselves. Edison was living like a beginner, but he was thinking like a king. He understood that temporary defeat is not permanent identity. And eventually the world lit up because he refused to let his inner light go out. This is the discipline of belief, not blind belief, not fantasy, but chosen belief. Belief that persists in the absence of evidence, belief that survives rejection, belief that grows stronger in isolation. Because the truth is, the world will rarely validate you in the beginning. It will question you. It will test you. It will ignore you. Not because you are unworthy, but because every powerful identity must be forged in pressure. Look at Andrew Carnegie. He arrived in a new country with almost nothing. No wealth, no status, no certainty, just a vision. He worked relentlessly, not as a man defined by his current position, but as a man defined by his future. He trained his mind to see beyond his present reality. He refused to internalize limitation. And over time, his external world reorganized itself around his internal standard. He became one of the most powerful industrialists in history, not because he was chosen, but because he chose himself. This is where most people hesitate. They wait for evidence. Before they believe, they wait for results before they commit. They wait for confidence before they act. But kings reverse this order. They believe first, they commit first, they act first. And confidence follows action. Results follow persistence. Evidence follows identity. Because the mind is always watching. It is always listening. It is always shaping your behavior based on the story you tell yourself. If your story is, I am trying, your actions will be cautious. If your story is, I am hoping, your actions will be hesitant. But if your story is, I am becoming, your actions will be inevitable. This is why clarity is power. You must see yourself clearly. Before the world sees you clearly, you must define yourself. Before circumstances define you, you must decide who you are. Before reality reflects who you are. Because if you do not define yourself, the world will define you by your past, by your mistakes, by your limitations, by your fears. But your past is not your throne. Your mind is. And the moment you sit on that invisible throne, something extraordinary begins to happen. You stop reacting to life. You start directing it. You stop waiting for opportunity. You start creating it. You stop fearing rejection. You start expecting alignment. Because deep inside, you know something most people never discover. You know that your current life is not your final form. You know that your present circumstances are not your permanent identity. You know that you are in the early chapters of something that will one day make sense. And this knowing changes everything. It changes how you endure hardship. It changes how you interpret failure. It changes how you carry yourself in moments when nothing is certain, because even in uncertainty, you are certain of yourself. And that certainty is magnetic. It pulls opportunity toward you. It pulls growth toward you. It pulls transformation toward you. Not because the world suddenly became generous, but because you finally became aligned with the person you were always meant to be. Alignment is silent. It does not announce itself with fireworks. It does not arrive with applause. It feels like a quiet shift inside your chest, a calm authority replacing restless doubt. It feels like waking up one morning and realizing you are no longer negotiating with your own potential. You are honoring it. Most people betray their potential daily, not intentionally, but consistently they trade long-term greatness for short-term comfort. They trade vision for validation. They trade purpose for popularity. And then they wonder why their life feels heavy. A king does not carry heaviness the same way. A king carries responsibility, and responsibility is different. Responsibility is chosen. It is the awareness that your life is not random. It is directed, it is shaped, it is influenced by what you repeatedly think and repeatedly do. Look at Henry Ford. Before the factories, before the production lines, before the wealth, there was ridicule. Experts told him the automobile was impractical. They said horses were reliable. They said mass production was impossible. They said the average person would never afford such a machine. But Ford was not building for the opinions of today. He was building for the reality of tomorrow. He thought like a king in an era that saw him as a mechanic. He did not let temporary understanding define permanent vision. And eventually the world drove on roads shaped by his persistence. This is what discipline really is. Not punishment, not restriction, but loyalty to your future self. Discipline is the bridge between identity and reality. It is waking up when you do not feel like it. It is working when no one is watching. It is improving when no one is applauding. Because when you think like a king, you understand something powerful. You are not working for your current circumstances. You are working for your coming kingdom. Every hour invested, every skill developed, every habit strengthened. These are bricks, and you are laying them daily. Most beginners become discouraged because they focus on how far they have to go. Kings focus on how far they have come, not with pride, but with perspective. They measure progress, not perfection. They respect the process, even when it is slow, because they understand that mastery is not explosive. It is cumulative. A single workout will not transform your body. A single book will not transform your mind. A single risk will not transform your life. But repeated commitment over time, that is unstoppable. Consider Walt Disney. He was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. He faced bankruptcy. He was rejected by banks. He heard no more times than most people could tolerate. But imagination was not something he waited for permission to use. It was something he protected fiercely. He continued to draw, continued to create, continued to believe in a world no one else could yet see. And from that belief came worlds that millions now escape into. He lived like a beginner, but he guarded his imagination like a king guards a kingdom. And that is another truth you must understand. Your mind is sacred territory. Guard it. Guard what you allow into it. Guard the conversations you entertain. Guard the narratives you repeat. If you constantly consume doubt, you will produce hesitation. If you constantly absorb negativity, you will radiate limitation. But if you feed your mind with growth, vision, and possibility, you will begin to think beyond your current environment. This is how transformation begins. Not with a new job, not with a new city, but with a new standard. When your internal standard rises, your external tolerance drops. You stop tolerating mediocrity in yourself. You stop tolerating excuses. You stop tolerating small thinking, because you know you are building something bigger than your present moment. And this is where resilience is forged. Resilience is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is steady. It is the decision to continue even when progress feels invisible. It is the ability to stand in uncertainty without collapsing into doubt. It is the refusal to let temporary storms convince you that the sky has permanently changed. When you think like a king, you expect storms. You expect setbacks. You expect resistance, not because you are negative, but because you are realistic. Every great ascent faces gravity. Every powerful idea faces opposition. Every growing person faces discomfort, but discomfort is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that you are expanding, and expansion always feels unfamiliar at first. There will be nights when you question yourself, moments when the silence feels heavy, days when effort does not immediately reward you. In those moments, remember this: beginners look for evidence. Kings create it. Beginners ask, what if I fail? Kings ask, what if I succeed beyond imagination? Beginners focus on what they lack. Kings focus on what they can build. And this shift in focus changes everything. Because where focus goes, energy flows. And where energy flows, results grow. You do not need to live like a king today. You do not need the palace. You do not need the recognition. You do not need the wealth. You need the mindset. You need the standard. You need the unshakable decision that your current chapter is not your final chapter. Because when you hold that decision long enough, when you align your habits with it, when you protect it fiercely, reality begins to rearrange itself around your conviction. Doors open, skills sharpen, opportunities appear, not by magic, but by momentum. And momentum is born the moment you stop shrinking yourself to fit your circumstances and start expanding yourself to outgrow them. Outgrowing your circumstances is not comfortable. It will not feel natural in the beginning, because your mind has been trained by your past, and your past will try to convince you to remain loyal to who you used to be. It will whisper familiar doubts. It will remind you of previous failures. It will attempt to protect you by keeping you small. But protection and growth rarely coexist, because growth requires you to step into uncertainty without guarantees. Growth requires you to act before you feel ready. Growth requires you to trust a version of yourself you have not yet met. This is where most people retreat. They wait for confidence. They wait for clarity. They wait for the perfect moment when fear disappears. But that moment never comes. Confidence is not given before action. Confidence is earned through action. Clarity is not found before movement. Clarity is revealed through movement. Power is not discovered in comfort. Power is discovered in commitment. There was a man who failed so many times that the world labeled him unworthy. His early businesses collapsed. He was rejected repeatedly. He faced humiliation, financial loss, and uncertainty. Most people would have accepted defeat as identity, but he refused, because he did not measure himself by temporary outcomes. He measured himself by permanent vision. That man was Colonel Sanders. He was rejected over 1,000 times before someone said yes to his recipe. 1,000 times he faced closed doors. 1,000 times he could have surrendered his belief. But kings do not surrender their identity to temporary rejection. They understand that rejection is not a verdict. It is a filter. It removes those who cannot see your vision. It strengthens your commitment to those who will. And eventually, persistence bends probability. This is why patience is not weakness. Patience is power under control. It is the ability to remain loyal to your mission when results are delayed. It is emotional discipline in the face of uncertainty. It is the refusal to panic when progress feels slow. Because kings do not measure time the same way beginners do. Beginners focus on days. Kings focus on decades. They understand that anything meaningful takes time to construct. A cathedral is not built in a day. An empire is not built in a week. A powerful identity is not built overnight. It is built through repetition, through endurance, through silent victories no one applauds. There will be moments when no one believes in you. Moments when your efforts go unnoticed. Moments when the distance between where you are and where you want to be feels overwhelming. In those moments, remember this truth: you are not behind. You are building. Every skill you practice is sharpening your weapon. Every challenge you face is strengthening your armor. Every sacrifice you make is increasing your capacity. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is meaningless. Everything is preparation. This is why you must protect your vision from fragile minds. Not everyone will understand your path. Not everyone will support your growth. Not everyone will see what you see. And that is not your burden to carry, because vision is always lonely before it becomes reality. When a seed is planted beneath the soil, no one applauds its growth. No one sees its struggle. No one recognizes its transformation. But beneath the surface, roots are forming. Strength is developing. Foundation is expanding. And one day, it breaks through the surface visible, unstoppable, inevitable. You are in that stage now, not visible yet, but becoming, not celebrated yet, but evolving, not finished yet, but rising. This is why comparison is dangerous. Because when you compare your beginning to someone else's middle, you create unnecessary doubt. You forget that every king was once unknown. Every master was once unskilled. Every powerful figure was once overlooked. They did not become powerful overnight. They became powerful through consistency, through resilience, through refusal to quit when quitting would have been easier. You must develop this refusal. This quiet, unshakable decision that no matter how long it takes, you will continue, because the moment you refuse to quit, you become unconquerable. The world cannot defeat someone who refuses to surrender. Circumstances cannot break someone who refuses to redefine themselves as weak. Time cannot stop someone who refuses to stop moving. This is the mindset that transforms beginners into kings. Not talent, not luck, not privilege, but persistence guided by belief. There will be pain. There will be sacrifice. There will be moments of doubt. But doubt is not your enemy. Doubt is your test. It asks you one question. Are you committed? Or are you interested? The interested stop when it becomes difficult. The committed continue when it becomes uncomfortable. The interested wait for motivation. The committed rely on discipline. The interested dream of the crown. The committed build the kingdom. And you must decide which one you are, because the crown is not given to those who wish. It is earned by those who endure, earned by those who persist, earned by those who think like kings long before the world calls them one.